Hello, everybody. It's James here. Storytime with Dutch Mantell, episode 29. He's lost his hat. No, it's still on there. Did you grab your hat then? It sort of put me off. You okay?
Oh, no, I just touched my hat.
Oh, there you
So
go. I was worried
Here
that
we
you
go.
lost your hat. Okay, then. So, we'll do some plugs first. I've written two, Owen, Hart and The Rock. Links in the description of the podcast and the YouTube. Dutch has written two books as well, The World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. And if you want those signed, they go to Dirty Dutch Mantell with two L's at gmail.com. And then you can negotiate, well, you can't negotiate a price. The price is set, but then you can negotiate how many books you want and where they want them sent to, and then the P&P will be whatever it is, depending on what country you're into. We've got an hour's worth of questions for Dutch at gmail.com if you want your question asked by Dutch. And are you ready for the first one?
I am ready. I'm always ready.
Man, I rattled through that intro,
Okay,
and I've said some of the words right.
We're getting in the car right now.
Mm.
We're cranking the car up. We're getting ready to pull on the interstate. Okay, and let's go to Atlanta, Georgia.
Are you driving?
You're driving. I don't ever drive. You're driving, and I'm talking.
I'm a control freak, so I've got to drive anyway, so it works out fine.
Oh, that'd be good then.
Yeah. The first question is Herman's Hermit. In the latest issue of the Wrestling Observer, your close personal long-time friend Dave Meltzer said the following. On April 2nd, 1995, Kintaro Oki was honoured at a Tokyo Dome event promoted by Weekly Pro Wrestling, and he was wheelchair-bound and wheeled to the ring by Lou Thez. He was very emotional backstage, even though he had history in Houston, where Oki tried to... it's probably pronounced Oki anyway. Oki tried to shoot on Thez and steal the NWA title, which ended up backfiring on Oki when he ended up going out on a stretcher when it was over. Do you have any knowledge of this story?
No, but I read up on it since you sent me that. And where did this match happen? Houston?
Said Houston, yeah.
But the event that they honored him was in Tokyo, correct?
I imagine this was decades after the fact.
And he was in a wheelchair, which is the same way he left the ring in Houston. In a well, not a wheelchair, but a gurney. This is what I think happened. I think that, and I don't know how much people know about Japanese wrestling, and hell, I didn't even know this when I first went over there. But the mafia has a tremendous influence over pro wrestling in Japan. Not anymore, but when I first went over there, yes. Because I've told the story about seeing one finger on a guy or two fingers on a guy. You know, if a guy messes up, they'll take off a finger. If he messes up twice, takes the second finger. Till he ends up, I saw one guy with I've said this before, with three fingers missing. I said, damn, what a F up he was. He couldn't get shit straight. But anyway, what I think happened was the mafia fought each other behind the scenes for control of wrestling. I'm sure who this guy, Kintaro Oki?
Yeah, Kintaro Oki.
Okay, he was, they wanted the NWA title. And was he the title holder then?
Yeah, he will have been, yeah.
Okay. And they wanted him to double cross Lou Thez and win the title, which gave them, they would have tape of this and all this. They could back up what they said, that they had the title winner. Well, one guy not to mess around with, especially back in those days when he was still a hoss, they call him, was Lou Thez. And I think the Kintaro, the Japanese guy, tried to knock him out with a headbutt. Well, all he did was piss off Lou Thez. And Lou stretched him like a pretzel, and they carted him out on a gurney. So that backfired on him. But I'm sure this guy was under pressure from, the mafia. They can be one group or two groups or three groups. But the group he worked for, he was under pressure to see if he could take the title off Thez. If he had been able to do that, he'd have been set for life. But since he failed, well, and we saw in the where they honored him in Tokyo, When was that? How long ago was that?
Well, the honouring was in 1995. I imagine that this bout would have been in, what, the 50s, maybe?
Maybe 60s or 70s. I even had it wrong. When was it?
I'm going to find out one sec. Let me pause. Okay, so we're back, and that took forever. We couldn't figure out when this happened, but we worked out that Thez, the last time he was NWA champion, was between 63 and 66. So this could not have happened any later than 66, it seems.
Well, as I was saying, the Mafia had a tremendous influence over pro wrestling in Japan. So I am sure that this guy, Kentura Oki, whatever his name was paid by certain Mafia figures to take the belt off Inoki. I mean, I take the belt off Lou Thesz. But that little accomplishment is a lot easier talked about than done. See, an old figure in Japanese wrestling, and if you just read a little bit about him, was Ricky Kadosian.
Ricky
what was his
Dozan.
name? Ricky Dozan. Heavy in the Mafia. Actually, the Mafia killed him, but this guy Kentura tried to take the belt off of him, and I read later that after he had butted Lou Thesz a couple of times, Lou Thesz said, "All right, tired of playing." Took him down to beat the living shit out of him, hurt him, not only pinned him, I guess, but they carted him out on a stretcher. So now you go forward to 95 when they were doing a ceremony honoring this guy. He goes in, not on a stretcher, but in a wheelchair, probably as a result of Lou Thesz beating the crap out of him. But Lou Thesz is pushing the wheelchair.
It's nice he got over it.
Well, but they said that Lou Thesz backstage was very emotional, talking about it, and I'm sure that he has forgiven Kentaro for what he tried to do, because he see, when you just hear this on the front end, you don't realize what makes a guy to be so stupid, because Lou Thesz was no joke as an amateur wrestler. You just didn't mess with him. If you looked at him, he didn't look all that tough till you locked up with him. And I heard this for years and years and years when I first started wrestling. The hookers, not the hookers that walk the streets, the hookers that hook one arm here and one arm down there and a leg up in your mouth. And those were the hookers, because they had the potential to really mess you up. And I'm sure this Japanese guy found that out first class. But for his motivation, I'm sure the Mafia said, if you can do this, we'll give you so many yen or whatever. And he didn't get it done. So he was in bad shape when he left that ring. So that's why it happened. And that's why it didn't get done.
We were talking beforehand, and you couldn't quite remember if you had wrestled Lou Thesz or not. And if you had, they wouldn't have told you it was Lou Thesz, and you wouldn't have known who he was.
Wait just a minute. Lou Thesz continued to wrestle after his title reign.
Oh, yeah.
He would, yeah. And I did, maybe I might have been I remember being in dressing rooms with him, nice guy. Of course, if I'd have known what I know now, I would have sat down with him and picked his brain. I picked his brain a little bit, but I didn't know what I was picking. I didn't even know what questions to even ask him. And that's why I say he didn't look tough, but he was tough. But he was a nice guy, always very nice to me. And when did he die?
Oh, in the 2000s, I think. He's one of these people who had his last match at like 70-something, and he completely regretted it. He said it was just a terrible match. He never should have done it. But I think he wanted to say that he wrestled in the 90s, and he wrestled from the 30s to the 90s or something like that, just to say he'd done it, and he totally regretted it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know another guy who may regret it too. He got paid well, but he may regret leaving that legacy. The last match, they remember the old saying, "What have you done lately for me?" That's wrestling. What have you done lately? If you hadn't done nothing, get in line.
We shall move on. Next question. Charlie, hi, Dutch. The Undertaker tells a bit of a story about when they were starting out in Texas. They both talk about a match where Austin told Undertaker he was going to stretch him. They said you were there and kind of stirred the pot. Can you tell what you remember of that story? Thanks.
Well, it wasn't in Texas. It was in Tennessee. And I was the booker, and I had brought Undertaker in, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was brought in, but not by me. He was brought in by Jerry Jarrett. That was an office-to-office arrangement. And I can't remember the name, but it was right outside Nashville on I-40, some little high school out there, or maybe it was a National Guard Armory. But we all dressed in the same dressing room, and they were kidding each other. And Stone Cold wasn't kidding Undertaker. Undertaker was kidding Stone Cold. And they were both laughing. And something about, see if you can stretch me. We'll go out there and we'll try it. So I started the match with the other guy that was Taker's buddy. Then I got in the ring with Taker a minute. And then both of them were saying, tag Steve. Steve said, tag me. I said, okay. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know they were like kind of serious about it, because all the signs I should have gotten in the dressing room, I didn't get because they were kind of kidding around about it. And Steve was. Undertaker wasn't, though, because he didn't like being ripped by Steve. I'm going to stretch you. Okay. So they get in the ring and they lock up. And I call this an old Southern Tennessee saying, they wallered. It's wallowed, really, but they wallered around the ring for about a minute, trying to do this and trying to do that. And it was the most boring, say, minute or 90 seconds I've ever seen in the wrestling ring. And finally, Undertaker wrapped him up somehow. And they're just laying there looking at each other. And the fans are looking at them. I'm looking at them. I'm looking at the fans. I went, this is the shits. Finally, I called into the ring. All right, Mark, let him up. Hey, Mark, let him up. And I think I must not have said it loud enough. Finally, a fan at ringside said, Mark, let him up. And so they got up, and then they tagged out, and then we continued the match. Then we got back in the dressing room. They went over there and shook each other's hand. And I said, damn, that was awful, guys. What the hell? And about me stirring the pot, I don't remember stirring the pot, really. I didn't have to stir the pot. The pot was already boiling.
Who were you riding with that night?
I forgot. It wasn't far from where I lived, so I probably rode by myself. It was only like 30 miles from where I lived.
So you didn't get the
no
sort of car ride complaints afterwards then?
Well, I was probably riding with Taker then. I remember it was around Christmas. I do remember it was kind of cold weather outside. I do remember that. But I never did get the story. All I got was, well, he just said he could do it. And I said, do it. And he said, I'll do it. And we'll do it. Well, I will. Okay, let's do it. And they got in the ring and they did it, or whatever they did. And then I told them to get up because they were embarrassing all of us. And oh, you should have seen the tag. They both got up like, all right, get in, boy. That was the coldest tag ever of all wrestling history. It was a cold tag on both ends. So that was how it ended.
Was it Godfather who was Taker's tag partner at that time?
Could have been. It could have been. So I may have putting this on Twitter. 3 of them are Hall of Famers, and then there was me. And whoever thought those guys would be Hall of Famers then? But somebody said, did see? I give Stone Cold. I give him the name. I didn't give him the name Stone Cold. I give him the name Austin because he come to Memphis. His name was Steve Williams. I said, well, you can't be Steve Williams here. He said, why not? That's my damn name. And I said, well, we already got one Steve Williams, Dr. Death Steve Williams. You can't have two of them. I mean, so I said, think of a name. I'll come back. So I went around, did some stuff, come back. You got a name? No. Run around, come back. Now Lance Russell, the announcer, is waiting there for a name. He said, what are we going to call the kid, Dutch? I said, hell, I don't know. I said, call him Steve friggin' Austin. And he says, like the $6 million man? I said, no, in your case, more like the $6 man. Now get your ass out there. And that's where he got the name, and he kept it. And Stone Cold later was given to him by his girlfriend, he said.
Yep.
So I said how he got it. And he still tells that story. So he come back in the dressing room after the match. Match wasn't that bad. I was in a badass mood anyway, trying to book that dying ass place. This was after Vince had taken over everything. And what year did you say this was?
Oh, I didn't say year. This is probably around 89 or something.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 81. I said, no, we was doing great business in 81. So he walked in my little dressing room up front. Lawler was here. I was here, and somebody else, Jerry Jarrett was over there, but Jerry Jarrett wasn't there. He walked in. He says, what didn't you like about my match? I said, no, it'd be a lot easier to ask what I did like about your match, which is nothing. And I've told this before. I think I hurt his feelings. I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take a chair, and I want you to sit outside the dressing room or somewhere where you can see the matches. I want you to watch every match every night till you leave. And he did that. I walked by later. There's an hour later or so. There he was, chewing his tobacco and watching the match. And I said, damn, I cannot believe a wrestler who actually does what you ask him to do. But in so learning, he told me years later, he says, that was the best advice you ever gave me on the spur of the moment. He said, I know you didn't think of it, but so I went out there every night and watched every match. Even when I got to WWF, I watched every match every night and developed my own style. And it helped him.
I like that you're, I may have said this to you before, but you're almost like the Forrest Gump of wrestling. You seem to be at all these pivotal points in other people's careers as well.
Well, I was there for him, was there for Undertaker, Kane, there for him.
Sting, Ultimate Warrior. You probably won't,
well, I didn't,
thank me for bringing up Warrior.
Well, that's a whole different story, but I was there for them. And I wanted to tell them, guys, as of right now, you have zero chance to make a friggin' nickel in this business the way you are. What I was trying to tell them is, guys, you need work and a lot of it. And you need to go out there and they finally got that push is when they got to, I think Warrior went to Texas. Mm-hmm. But see, you can only do so much with so little. And they probably carved out a piece that what worked. His matches were never long because he'd blow up. He would see weightlifters were not necessarily, they weren't in shape. They were in weightlifting shape, but not wrestling shape. So, and then when he got to WWF with Vince saw the body, saw the gimmick, Ultimate Warrior. Well, we can do something with them. And he molded Warrior into what he entered the Hall of Fame on. Everything Warrior did was picked apart. His matches were all under 10, 6, 7, 8 minutes.
Oh,
they weren't long.
if that. I mean, until he started wrestling Rick Rude, who could guide him to, longer than 3 minutes. Do you know, you actually reminded me of something that I want to bring up. I interviewed Ken Shamrock a few weeks ago, and he said that he had a tryout match with the WWF in 1989. He lost to Barry Horowitz. And he said when he was coming back through gorilla position, he saw that I think Ultimate Warrior was the match before him. And when he came back through gorilla, he found Ultimate Warrior on a chair, sort of breathing really hard, and then he passed out and collapsed on the floor.
Yep.
Did that happen around you?
Did he collapse? No, but he was. See, we had longer matches in Memphis. And that's why we put him in a tag match, because at least if the match was 10 minutes, at most he could do 5. And he was having trouble doing that. Sting was in better shape, not that much better, because he was all puffed up and blown up. I mean, blown out, So, and that surprised me about them. These guys, they preach all this getting in shape and doing, and they can't hardly, it might blow them up to walk to the ring. And Vince, he knew his capabilities. He at least could look at him and realize that. So he needed help. And that's what made those, what they call enhancement talent. That's what made them so valuable. You couldn't put him in like SmackDown does today. See, they wouldn't hire an Ultimate Warrior today. Because if he can't go out there and go 10, 15 on his own, they're not going to rearrange everything on their card to fit that. And I can understand that. But no, he never passed out on me. I may have passed out on him a time or two trying to watch him. And I was going, oh, God, let me get out of here. And I would tell him, hey, don't go more than 8 minutes. 8 minutes. That's like in a house show, a live event. Your first matches should go about under 10. But always put your first match on with 2 guys who can bang it, who can really burn it. You put 2 guys on that don't burn it and they just walk around and huff and puff, that puts your crowd in a bad mood. And then unless your other matches follow that, but they may never have gotten over the first one. So put one of your best high-flyingest matches on first, warm that crowd up so you can see what they can do. And then usually you put your, what I call the Drek, you put your Drek on second. And that's where Warrior and Sting found themselves most times in the second match.
Next question, Sammy D. A number of wrestlers who wrestled for the WWF in the mid-90s had dealings with a WWF office member called Lisa Wolf. She apparently had come from the NFL world, and everybody who has spoken about her, Kevin Nash, Sean Waltman, and J.J. Dillon, really were not fans of hers. Did you have any dealings with Lisa at this time?
Well, I wasn't a fan of hers either, because she comes from a different world. She comes from the world of competitive sports. All her people would have gone to college, maybe graduated college. And I never knew what her job was. She was trying, at one point she called a meeting and she was trying to talk to us about social media. Don't say this and don't say that. But I was never impressed by her. I don't know what was she over?
She was, so this is 95, this is before the social media days. This was in the new
generation. No,
it
was just starting.
But sorry, what was your question? What was she
over?
No,
I said, yeah, what was she over? What was her title?
I don't know. I don't think many people knew, but she seemed to be like third in command or something at one point. I think she may have been even above J.J. Dillon at one point, who was talent relations manager.
Well, she was in. I do remember her talking to the talent, but I do remember her. I mean, that was in the days of, actually, early in the days of social media. It was Prodigy. They had an app called Prodigy that was like one of the first ones. So I was on Prodigy. I don't know how I even had a computer, but I bought one. And, that wasn't even the internet. That was called the intranet. So everybody was on Prodigy. You could just talk to people on Prodigy. That's it. And then later, it gained and gained and gained and gained. But I do remember her talking to us something about that. She had something to do with investing your money. And I was thinking at the time, that was one of the times WWE was flat on its ass. You would spend more money sometimes going on the road than you would make. They quit booking me, but I was going to quit anyway. And somebody says, well, if you quit, you can't work anywhere else. I said, bullshit. I says, if I can get a gig, this was it's about 94, 95. And she was a friendly enough lady. She was like in her 40s, maybe 45. But she was trying to deal with these guys. Basically, when you're dealing with Scott Hall and Nash and the Clique, they're going to make it hard on her because they can. Because Vince wasn't going to say nothing to them. See, Vince, I think, when the Clique came along, he wanted to be in it himself. He wanted to be the cool guys. So you had the Clique, and then you had the rest of the guys. So when we went to Germany on the European tour, the Clique sit in the back. It was the Undertaker, and it was Nash and Hall and Shawn Michaels and their little friends. They all sat in the back. And then it ended up with Sonny and Skip somehow sitting in the back with them. But that's where Sonny and Skip wanted to be. They started in the front with the deplorables, I call it. And that was me and, Kane and some of the rest of us up there. So I'm going to tell this story. So she kept trying to work her way in and work her way in, work her way in. Finally, one day, bam, her and Skip are in the back with the Clique. So we was all talking and we saying, well, she finally found her way back there, blah, blah, blah. That lasted about 3 days, 4 days, because one day we got on the bus to leave wherever we were going to. Like if we were in Munich, we'd stay in Munich and make the show the next day. That's where we'd end up the night before. And little Miss Sunny wasn't there. And we said, where is she? Where is she? And somebody says, well, that's when she had to leave the European tour early. Because, when you eat, say you eat the day before and you leave a little box and you write on it what you want, they would fill that for you. And when you left that night, you could just take it with you and go back to your room and eat it. That's your meal for the night. Well, somebody tampered with her little mailbox because we all knew what they did to it, right?
May have laid a little stink pickle.
Yeah, they laid one in there, and I heard she picked it up, went back to the room, and she's making all these long distance calls. Oh, yes, I'm in Munich and we're going to Paris tomorrow and we're doing all this stuff. Then she looked down in her noodles or whatever she had, and there's a little nugget. And she went nuts. And the first person she called is, what was that lady we was talking about? Lisa
Wolf.
She called Lisa Wolf. And Lisa was just appalled at these boys, as she called them, or whoever would do this to her, and immediately retracted her from the tour. She left that morning, the night after. As soon as the plane went out, they booked her on it and got her back. And nobody ever knew who did that, except me. I mean, but it wasn't for years and years and years. I didn't even know who did it. because they didn't roll over on each other. Who do you think did it?
Oh, I've heard. Well, I think it was Sean Waltman.
You're correct. It was Sean Waltman.
How did you
He did
find
it.
out?
Finally, one day he broke down and told me. I saw him somewhere, and I says, and I brought the story up, and I said, brother, you got to help me out here. Listen, hell, I'm getting old now, so I need to know the answer to this before I fall over and die of a heart attack. Did you do that? And he went, yeah, I did it. He wanted to admit it anyway, but But see, if he'd admitted it right up front, they'd have fired him. They'd have had to. And none of the other guys were going to own up to doing it. They were just glad it got done. But they were going to show little Sonny that she might want to be in the clique, but could she hang with them? Because she went back there and she started acting stupid. And they said, all right, she's gone. Kick her out. So anyway.
You may have been with the company at the time. I think it was maybe around late 96, but it may have been 97 when you were gone. But did you ever hear the story of supposedly someone leaving a similar deposit in Mark Henry's sandwich?
Oh, yeah. That was in 95.
It would have been 96, I think, but yeah. So what was the circumstances there?
No, okay, yeah. Yeah, you're right, 96. Well, we was all sitting around one day in the afternoon. Things slow down, and we all go to. They have it ready about 2:00. Catering, and I didn't learn about this for about a week or two later, I think. But somebody made a little deposit in his box too. So. See, working in WWE wasn't like working down at Walmart. Wasn't like working at Costco or school or any place. Because you didn't know which one of these inbred bastards, these goofs, was going to do something to your food or do anything to you. Because they had and that was one thing of staying away from that group. Because they were heavy ribbers. One guy would cut off another guy's pants, which is not that bad. And he walks through with he's got long pants on one leg and then shorts on the other. That wasn't that bad. But when they mess with the food and they do all that, that was bad. And I don't know if Mark ever found out who did that. Did you ever find out?
Well,
hear a name?
Well, I did hear a name. It doesn't make any sense. Sean Waltman again, but he was in WCW at the time. So goodness knows who it may have been.
He was in WCW then?
Yeah, he was in. He left about May 96. Mark Henry was hanging around more and more towards mid 96 onwards, and I think Waltman has been accused of it, but he was already with the NWO. That's his story anyway.
Well, I think we might need to revisit those dates because I do remember it was in the spring of the year. I do remember that. Anyway, they did some crazy stuff. So you remember the time when Sean, the Heartbreak Kid, when he had to run in with the Blue Brothers,
yes,
in Madison Square Garden?
We talked about it with Tom.
That's right. That's right. And the thing that makes that, I didn't know they were going to do it. So if anybody to ask me what happened, I'd have to look at them and say, I don't know. And the first thing they would have said was, you're a damn liar. But I didn't know. I really didn't know. And they didn't even tell me even after they did it. I rode back to the hotel with them that night, and they didn't even tell me. Of course, a week later, Ron was gone, or 2 weeks later, he was gone. And then it was just me and Donnie. And then Donnie, they wasn't booking him, so they didn't book me. So, and that's when I ended up getting my Bradshaw on my own, I might add. I just went in there and I said, hey, you got a new guy here. You don't have nobody. I don't have nobody. Why don't you let me manage him? And then Bruce Pritchard walked in one day and he said, well, you got him. And he told John to sign the deal, and he was signed up. So everywhere he went, I went with him.
There's something that I remember when I was coming of age and going to pubs and bars and all that kind of thing is I was always told never leave your drink unattended, and if you're holding a drink, especially a bottle, put your thumb over the receptacle hole. And obviously that went, more than double for women because you never know who's out there who might go. Was that something that you had to be wary of in the 90s at least?
Hell yeah. I mean, I'm not a big bar goer tour because you get in the bars, people act stupid. Somebody could say something, it could be taken wrong, or I could say something taken wrong. I didn't want to deal with it. So I didn't go to the hotel bars. I just didn't go. And I didn't miss anything. But I did hear that if you go down there, watch you drink and don't leave it drink it all before you leave. If you go to the bathroom, then order another one. Yeah, that was bad too.
I remember one person did it to me once, dropped MDMA, which like black powdered ecstasy, in my drink, and I caught him. And, I told him where to go because I'm not a big drug person at all. And wouldn't you know, we found out years later he was a convicted rapist. So there you go.
Hey, you may have dodged the bullet, buddy.
Yeah, well, exactly. I wasn't his type, but I think that would have given me energy to run away rather than the other way and fall asleep. But anyway, we will move, enough about my very strange past with very shady characters. Next question, Peter Howe. I have one big one. And he's bragging here apparently as well.
A big one. Oh, I gotta see. Let me see it. Can we see it?
Kurt Angle came in right. Oh, there you go, crikey. Who Mrs. Grimsdale? Kurt Angle came in right after Vince Russo's return in 2006. If Russo hadn't been booking, do you think Kurt Angle's arrival would have took TNA to great heights, or do you think Dixie would have undermined it anyway?
Well, I think there's a misunderstanding about who was undermining who. Dixie was the biggest drawback of anybody there because this is what Dixie would do. Dixie would go on the fan sites. She would literally, under an assumed name, she would talk to fans about what they liked, what they didn't like, and she would draw her conclusion from that. Of course, you're going to get, out of 50 responses, you're going to get probably 35 disliking it. I don't care what it was. So then she tried to add in her own sideline booking, and she knew, and this is not a knock on Dixie. As the person, I like Dixie. She just didn't know how to book. She didn't know how to write. She didn't know the rule of thumb. She didn't know anything. I thought that's why she hired a creative team. So, and then it's whoever she liked in the dressing room. They would all go up to her and put her over, and she liked that. She liked to be complimented. I mean, what woman doesn't? But then they could bring up, do you think, I don't think they're doing the right thing with me. Why not? Well, then they would say, well, I don't think Dutch likes me, or I don't think Vince or Jeff like me. Now it turns personal. And she has come back and she says, do you like so-and-so? I said, yeah, why? I was just wondering because, and she didn't say she's talked to him. She says, but the way y'all have treated him lately, it seems like you're almost, you don't like him. And it had nothing to do with a personality problem. It had something to do with whether we thought or not he could add to the bottom line. Could he actually contribute something that would make the TV worth seeing? Now, sometimes you can watch any show. You can watch, let's take SmackDown. They will beat a guy to death and all of a sudden turn around and start doing something with him in an angle which makes him more valuable than, of course, just going out there and losing all the time. But a lot of guys did that. That's the way I learned. I went out there and I got beat every night, not just 7 nights a week. I got beat 8 nights a week. I mean, they beat me up, down, sideways, and then beat me some more. But when they got ready to do something with me, then they just went, they just turned the wheel and sent me in a different direction. That's what she didn't understand. But we're talking about Kurt Angle now.
Yeah, well, specifically, this fella seems to think that Vince Russo did Kurt Angle dirty in the creative.
No. I mean, he came in on Christmas, on New Year's Eve after 12 o'clock. That's when his contract was up on December the 31st. And we started the new year with that. The show was live. We did it live on air from Orlando. I think it was like a big party or something. And he came out because we had been, foreshadowing this. And I don't know what he's exactly referring to, but I don't know if the guy knows this. When Kurt came to us, Kurt was actually in a bad way physically because WWE finished him up, or his contract ended on December the 31st. How many contracts do you know that WWE let go with no 90-day, space in there? Non-compete. None.
Yeah.
But Kurt, when he finished,
didn't they?
Yes, they thought he was going to die because, and he's told me this himself. I like Kurt. Kurt told me, he said he was taking 10 Vicodins before he got up. 10 Vicodins, after a while, will kill you. Steady diet. He said at one point he was taking, and I couldn't believe this, and I finally asked around. He said he was taking 60 a day. 60 Vicodins a day? I mean, it seemed like your liver would collapse or something. And WWE realized how bad a shape he was in, and I don't know how they got word of this or wind of this, but they did not want him dying while still under a WWF or was it WWE?
Yeah.
WWE contract. That's why they finished him up as quick as they could. So that should be a red flag, or should have been a red flag for people out there. But TNA was so, hungry to get a star like, Kurt Angle, and they were aware of his drug usage. And then when he got there, Dixie told us to see if we could watch him. I said, and I didn't say to her, but I said to Jeff and Vince, I said, wait a minute, are we hall monitors now? How are we going to watch him? How are we going to watch him doing anything? He's a grown man, therefore he has free will. And if I tell him to stop, you think he's going to listen to me? No. If Vince tells him, you think he's going to listen to Vince? No. Or Jeff? Even Dixie, he might say, oh, yeah, well, I've cut down a lot. He might just get by her. But, once we knew what and we were told that was the case before he came. So Dixie was well aware of it. I was well aware of it. So I'm thinking, what if he dies here? We're getting him to help us, but he could come in and he could die. And God forbid that would happen, but it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. So anyway, we were stuck with a well-known and actually public knowledge of his drug use, and he would tell you. And thank God that he cleaned up and he's still with us.
I know this sounds like weird.
Does that answer the question, or
it sort of does? Actually, I'm actually gonna ask something similar.
Because he would. Okay, we could give him the finish before the match, and then look around, and here's Kurt. He's over in the corner. He's asleep. And I actually told him, I said, guys, he's going to die. He's going to die one night here. Get him on a plane. He's passed out. I got a picture of him passed out on the plane. because he don't know I got it. I mean, going to sleep on planes, nothing new. But he would, as soon as he got there, he was out. When we landed, we had to wake him up.
Well, I'm going to ask the question this way then. And with Kurt Angle, you've got to put him in a prominent position. He is now going to be one of the faces of the company, yet you know he's in such a bad state. So, I mean, is there anything you can do creatively to sort of minimize his impact, to pardon the pun, on TV?
Well, he'd wake up for that. I mean, he wasn't out to where you couldn't get him awake. He was fine. And we kept we didn't, let me just say this, we didn't get our potential out of him at all. So the money they paid Kurt was just to have his name under TNA contract.
Did you veto some creative because you knew Kurt Angle was in the state he was in, or did he just basically have to be in the main event every week and that was that?
Well, we didn't veto anything because he could still perform. You know, it's according to how we would have to judge what kind of shape he was in every night that he went out. Another guy that you don't hear that much about, but you saw the match on TV, was Sting. I mean, I'm sorry, Jeff Hardy, not Sting. And they still have this match on YouTube. Jeff Hardy and Sting. When Bischoff was there. And he was so messed up. Now, I wasn't there then, but they tell me the story. They even questioned even having the match. And I think Bischoff went to the ring, and without a microphone, he just said, hey, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. And you could see Jeff there. He's wavering. He's like smoke going up. And the match lasted about 3-4 minutes.
If that.
Awful match. And anybody noticing that knew that something was wrong with him. But one time, even a year or so before that, we had Jeff to run. Supposedly, we had him, and we gave him this finish early on the night. He was got to run in the ring and help somebody. But this beatdown went on and on and on and on. And send Jeff, well, we didn't know where he was. Send Jeff. And we went, now a bunch of us go flying, looking out to where Jeff could have gone to. I find him outside the studio in a car listening to music, and I beat on his window, and he said, yeah, man, yeah. I said, this was like 5 minutes after he was supposed to be there. And I said, man, you got to go in the ring now. They've been waiting on you for 5-10 minutes. Not that long, but I exaggerated a little bit. And he got up, went through the wrong door because that was the shortest door to go through, went in and got in the ring and finished it. And then when they wanted to know where he was, I told him, I said, he's out there in the car. He's messed up. He didn't even know where he was or what he was supposed to do. And if it hadn't been for heels, he'd come in the ring and they attacked him and told him to hit me back. He didn't know where he was. But yet they signed into this lucrative contract. So therefore, he was doing more damage than what he was doing good.
I mean, it's amazing that TNA got away with it.
Well, I didn't sign him. They did. I would have said, listen, if he's that bad of shape, I think we need to find homegrown talent and kind of do something with that, because this guy's, I think, the guy was great. He was. Who was I just talking about? Hardy?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I forgot it. Jeff's the greatest guy in the world, the friendliest guy in the world, and probably the most kind, hearted guy in the world. If he's straight, I mean, I have known never anybody say anything wrong about Jeff Hardy personally, because there's nothing to say wrong about. He's just, if you met him and he's straight, you'd like him. Everybody would like him because he's so nice. But when he gets when he gets peeled up and it starts hurting your business, it's time to have a little, let's go have a little come to Jesus talk. But they never did it. And I think we finally had to send him home. I don't know what that deal was. I never delved into it, but that's the problems that sometimes creative gets saddled with. And I don't care who was booking. I'll go back to what I said on my last show. I don't care if Quentin Tarantino was producing the show. He couldn't have helped out Jeff Hardy at that particular time in his life. He needed to go to rehab, which he's been to now for several times, yet he still has a problem with it. And of course, the end of that problem is something happen if they die, if they OD. And that's what WWE at least had the foresight to see this guy has the possibility of dying on our watch. And see, they don't worry about just WWE. They worry about their advertisers. They worry about all the kids they sell at Christmas. And this guy dying of a drug overdose when he was such a huge star to kids, how's that going to affect us with our advertisers? Not good. So they said, well, we got to cut him loose before he cuts us.
Now, the funny thing is that they fired Jeff, now this off the top of my head, in 2003 for drug use, and I don't think he wanted to go to rehab. Goes straight to TNA, who hire him, and then TNA fire him. Am I assuming TNA fired him eventually for drugs as well? And then he goes straight back to WWE in like 2008 or something. See,
well, he was a great of both worlds for Jeff. All he would have to do is tell WWE, okay, I went to drug rehab for 30 days. I listened to him. I'm better now. Oh, great. Start back. And when he starts back, he's great for about a month. Then it's a little more and a little more and a little more, and they inherit the same problem they thought they'd gotten rid of.
Next question, Greg Blanton. Describe your time with Jeff Jarrett and Impact as it was transitioning over to Global Force Wrestling and what transpired when everything came crashing down for Jeff and GFW. Now, I know you don't know too much about that whole thing, but I'm thinking 2017...
Who was I working for? Who was I working for?
Well, let's say 2017, you're at Impact Wrestling, and then there's that whole kerfuffle with Global Force wanted to take over Impact, and then it immediately didn't. And then there's a company called Anthem that comes in, then Billy Corgan comes in. It's a giant corporate mess. Do you remember sort of the beginnings of that?
Well, I do remember some of it. And guess how much I remember?
Little.
Very little, because of I didn't want to know. Because again, with that TNA bunch, they've worked themselves into a shoot again, and I could do nothing for it. I couldn't help them. I couldn't do anything except sit there. And where did I say I spent a lot of time in when I was with TNA?
Catering, I believe, is it?
Catering, and this reinvigorated my catering habit, because listen, whatever they did, I wasn't going to be an instrumental in anything. And I don't even know, I was working for Impact, and then Jeff came back in and he had this other deal, Global, which I never, it was another company. And I was thinking, not to Jeff, not what Jeff told me, but I'm thinking, wait a minute, he's working here. He's got another company. How's that going to work? And then Anthem came in. How? I don't know. And then Billy Corgan came in, and Corgan came in after I did, but it was, and then I signed it with actually the guy from Anthem. I signed my contract for 1 year. And from about March to December, that's when my catering, my catering urge came back in. So I would go to the meetings and sit around, and I would throw an idea out, and they'd all look at each other and go right back to talking to what they were talking about before. Okay, they didn't like that one. Well, then I would throw something out later the next day or the day of, and they'd all look at each other like, that might be a good idea. No, that's good. So they totally overlooked two of my ideas. And if they weren't going to give it any more thought than that, it's useless. So I quit pitching ideas. I just quit. I would go down there and I'd go to catering and I'd go to the lunchroom and I'd walk around, drive my car, and I'd come back. What's going on? Because everybody else would leave too. See, it wasn't like come to this creative meeting and stay here the whole time, because you could leave and come back and not much has changed. So that's what I remember about it. Not much.
Do you remember? Now this became a meme almost. Global Force Gold.
What is that?
It was somehow Jeff Jarrett decided to get into a gold-selling pyramid scheme, and he called it Global Force Gold. And all it was a website, and apparently you could buy gold through Jeff Jarrett or something.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember that.
That's a shame. I wish I would have loved the inside track on that one. Jim Cornette's brought in at the beginning of 2017, I think maybe even the same day you were. Why did Jim Cornette get fired pretty much immediately?
Oh, wait a minute. This is from the last run?
Yeah, 2017, the Anthem era.
He was there?
Yeah, he did like one or two TVs, and then he just disappeared again. I think he was in the ring with Bruce Pritchard as well.
I'd have to go back and look at that. But I think Bruce was, I don't know. I don't think Bruce was there.
Yeah.
Bruce followed me.
Bruce, there's some footage of him. In fact, there's even like a graphic I took off the internet with you and Bruce together saying Dutch and Bruce have this big important announcement for Impact Wrestling.
Well, let me go back to my earlier answer. Where did I spend most of my time?
Catering.
All right. So apparently that news never hit the catering room.
We'll move on. A few more questions, I think, and then we'll call it a day. Charles in the Mississippi Delta. Hello, James and Dutch. Dutchman, I recall you in Memphis starting around 1981 as the Stone Cold before Stone Cold Steve Austin. You had heated matches with Kern, Lawler, Dundee, and King Cobra. I was fortunate enough to see you all wrestle each other, you and Cobra, in the summer of 1982. Any memories of those matches with KC? Thanks to both you all for the great podcast.
King Cobra,
great
guy from Memphis, worked the job 40 hours a week. He worked with the sanitation department, and he actually invented something that he actually made a lot of money off of. It was, and I forgot what it was now, but he sold it to all those sanitation companies in the country. It had a patent on it and everything, but can't remember what it was. But he was a part-time wrestler and a full-time sanitation department guy. Now later on, this is several years later, I took over the book. And I was looking to something to just be new. And it wasn't my idea. It was Lawler's idea. Lawler was the champion. And he says, why don't we put the title on Cobra? Again, not my idea, but Cobra's idea. Lawler's idea. But you got to respect a guy that wants to lose the title to Cobra. But he also owned a part of Memphis too. And since Cobra was an Afro-American and Memphis is predominantly, the area is heavily Afro-American, wasn't a bad idea. So we did it. And he got in the ring that night. Nobody in that building thought Cobra had a damn bat's chance in hell of beating Lawler. And I do remember that night, one guy who worked for one of the, what they call the smart sheets, sheet guy, he come out and he introduced himself on the floor and the match was going on. And then he saw the finish And he looked at me. He said, "I'll be damned. I didn't think nothing else could surprise me in this business. And you do it the first night I get here." Because it really surprised it ever. And it was a good idea. And probably Cobra kept it about 3 weeks. And then Lawler took it back. See, Lawler is a hell of a heel when he wants to be one. And so he turned actually Cobra, more babyface than he was. And he turned himself heel for 3 weeks. And it worked. Have you ever seen Lawler do his heel stuff?
Yeah, well, mostly in WWF, but a bit in Memphis as well.
His Memphis stuff he was over like a son of a gun in Memphis. It was great heel, and he could make a baby face in one night. See, that's what you got to do when you have heels. You want to push this baby face, put him over the first night, put him over strongly over your top heel. And if you had a heel like Lawler, you could go out and talk heat back into his character. You got it. And that's what they don't have today. They don't have a heel like Lawler, and they're still building them. They may get one. SmackDown may get one, but I think that Lawler, if they would just follow the rules that were set like 50 years ago, 40 years ago, they'd still be in better shape.
I actually watched the Jerry Lawler Ric Flair Memphis episode, and man, I mean, it's more interview promo than match itself, because I think the match goes like 8 or 10 minutes, or whatever it is. And,
interesting though.
Yeah, and do you know why it's interesting? It's because they're talking to each other like they're real people, like they're superstars, but they're real people. They're not faking that sort of that weird inflection that all wrestlers today do in their promos, that no one would talk to in real life. Jerry Lawler's just being fakely nice, trying to butter up Ric Flair. Ric Flair's being just the arrogant person. He never raises his voice once before the match. So, well, let me tell you something, sir, and then they go and have the match, and then they do the screaming later and everything. But man, why can no one just be real?
Well, I don't know why. We were real then. I'm going to send you an interview. I may have already sent it to you, of me and Lawler doing this interview, and it goes about 8 or 10 minutes. But it's because, like, Lawler, I've known you years, and all the people know this. They know that I would ride to the matches with her. I mean, it wasn't as big as WWE, so you could watch the parking lot from a lot of these little shows and watch who rode with who and who got out and who was friendly and who was this and who was that. But when you put it, and that was always the motto in Memphis, make it personal, and you had it. Because you could make it personal and tell a story to be compelling enough for you to buy a ticket and watch it. See, the last run I had with Lawler, we only had 3 matches. It took about 2 months to do it, but we didn't go match. We went a match, then we'd talk about each other 2 weeks, then we'd come back to another match. Then we'd talk each other 2 or 3 weeks, back to another match. We only had 3 matches in that time period, but there were matches that were sellouts. Over, just an issue, just a personal issue. And Lawler, one of these matches I went, almost all of them, I was a big baby face and Lawler was a big baby face. But when we went out there, Lawler turned about half heel. And I turned about half heel. Because some people wanted to see Lawler win. Some people wanted to see me win. And you had to watch how you did that. Because you had to watch how you beat either one of us. Because no matter who you beat, you pissed off the other half of the crowd. So we kept it. We come back with somebody will leave. I forgot the other match or whatever. I forgot what it was. But we had 3 matches, and one of them was a cage match, and one of them was no falls count. They were gimmick matches, but they worked because they still, and we never raised our voices except at the end. Maybe I slapped Lawler or Lawler slapped me. See, when I beat Lawler for the title, this one angle I'm talking about, the natural tendency is for the one that lost the title to get a rematch. It wasn't that way. Lawler, I won the match, but Lawler didn't want a rematch. No, Lawler wanted the rematch, and he was the champion, and I wouldn't give it to him. That's just reverse. And I says, when I get ready to give you the match, I'll let you know. And then we just took it from there in little stages. I'll send you this and see what you think of it, and we'll play it back on the show.
Yeah, I think we should do as well, definitely. This is sort of out of nothing, but when you talked about like someone going half heel and half heel, there's a great match. It's a WWF match from 86, Randy Savage versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, they're both bad guys at the time, and it's one of the best matches you'll ever see. So it's just a recommendation for anyone else who wants to watch that. But it's on one of the Saturday night's main events. If you got the network or Peacock or whatever, get it, definitely.
Matches like that are fun to watch, even if you've been in the business 40 years or 50 years like I have.
They don't even get near a finish. The referee ends up throwing it out at the end. So I've spoiled it. But the referee throws out due to the uncontrollable nature of the combatants. But it's a great match if anyone watches it.
Well, this was before, we don't need a bunch of DQs. I agree. A bunch of DQs hurts your whole card. But a DQ on an important match leaves it open without beating anybody. Then you can come back and, now you can have a finish. I'm always a big believer in finishes, but there is that rule. There's a rule to the rule that used sparingly, DQs work. There's also Madison Square Garden, wasn't it?
Oh, I don't know if it's Madison Square Garden. I don't know.
Madison Square Garden, they could do that because they're not back in that building for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Or at least a month. They could do that and just talk about it along the way. See, Savage could have an angle going with a babyface. Jake could have it going with another babyface. And all of a sudden, they just happen to not like each other, have that match. But look at the doors you leave open. Leave it to two baby faces you could pull in. You could have tag matches. Actually, you could have them tag up. But what a way for both of them to turn back heel attacking a baby face. So you got all those doors open instead of saying, well, I don't know what we're going to do because we've already done this and this and this. That to me is how you tell inexperienced creative people. They have no idea what to do. That's why, and you can agree with this or not, that's why they needed somebody like Vince, not say the Vince of the last 3 or 4 years, but Vince before, he's seen it all. So he can see, but I think he worked himself way back into a bubble where he didn't know how to get out of. So, but since Vince is gone and they have a new regime running the company, the show has increased about 100%.
I think we've got time for one or two more. We'll see how we go. This person, Gregory, says, did you ever hear the story of Bruce Pritchard pulling out a gun during a WWE creative meeting in 2008 shortly before he was fired? If so, what did you hear was the reason?
Well, I heard something about it, but not a lot was made of it. It doesn't make sense to me why Bruce Pritchard would pull a gun on creative. You're going to pull a gun on somebody, pull it on Vince, or put on one of them that had power. And I heard another story. You know how stories get mangled in the process of retelling them? I think they had a hurricane somewhere, and he left, and he had a gun in his bag, and he was traveling with it, but you can travel with it in your bag. And I think Stephanie heard about it and asked him, and he said, yeah, I got it in my bag. And I don't know how the rumor got started that he pulled it on creative. That doesn't sound like Bruce at all. I don't think he pulled a gun on anybody. And if he pulled it on him, they'd have to be damn almost robbing his house or doing something to him. But that doesn't sound like Bruce at all. So I'm gonna mark this down to disinformation, and I'm gonna send it to Twitter, and Elon won't let it on.
Next question. Ian, I love hearing Farouk and Bradshaw's road story / ribs, but why do they pick on Theodore Long every time? And was Dutch a road buddy of Bradshaw and Farouk back in the day? And does Dutch have road stories of ribs, of JBL and Farouk and their friends?
I did travel with JBL. That was early JBL before he got as crazy as he was later on. Why do they pick on Teddy Long?
Yeah, why not? I suppose he's the third one in the car.
Well, the reason they picked on him is because they liked him. And they both enjoyed ribbing him. And Teddy can rib back. So it wasn't like a one-way ribbing session because Teddy could give as much as he could take. And when somebody gets ribbed like that, you got to say, well, if he's in the car with them, they like him. Otherwise, he would not be in the car with them. And they rib him so long, it's a joke. And Teddy enjoyed it. JBL enjoyed it. You know, Farouk enjoyed it. So I just marked that down to friendship and working together. What was your other question?
Well, actually, I was going to ask this. How much time did you spend with Ron Simmons particularly?
Not that much, but he was a great, great guy. I used to talk to him about Florida State football because he was there in the Bobby Bowden era. You got to be a football fan to understand this. But he played Clemson. That was a huge, huge rivalry between them. And he would play and he would talk about the Clemson teams. And he was an All-American at Florida State at nose guard. And he wasn't really that big. He was about maybe 6 foot, 5'11", and about 260, but nobody could move him. So he was a great, great football player. And I used to talk to him about his Florida State days, which just, I remember him when I was a kid. So, and when he got there and then he got into wrestling, I started following him. I think he went to Florida first, Florida Championship Wrestling, and then he got with WWE and did great with them. He was the first black champion.
I believe so for WCW he was. In 92, I think. When he came to the WWF in 96, as you say, WCW's first black champion, I think he retired his shirt, didn't he, at Florida State. And then he comes into the WWF in 1996 and they say, you're going to be the Black Spartacus. And they're going to give him that powder blue helmet and the whole bit. Do you remember that outfit?
I don't remember that.
What?
But Ron, I don't remember any of that. But he came in 96.
Yeah.
Well, he got with JBL after that. But did he turn down the Spartacus deal?
No, he didn't. And in fact, I'm going to show you a photo. So one, that's just for the people at home, and two, that's what they dressed him up like. He was the.
Well, if he'd have kept the same ring work, he may have gotten over. But they should have went Ron Simmons from the beginning because he had history. What are you going to do with that history? Just write it off, or you're going to have to let it out sometime.
Do you remember who his manager was when he first came in as the Gladiator?
Teddy Long.
Sonny.
Really?
Really? For only a few weeks, Sonny was the manager.
I don't remember that.
Then the first
thing that was in the time that I think I was getting ready to leave. I didn't know it, but they knew it. But I was managing JBL, and we did this angle that separated me from him, so I knew it was over. And they just kept bringing me to TV, paying me. So, and then all of a sudden they said, "Well, your contract's up. We're gonna let you go."
And then the first thing he did is, I can't remember if this was real or not, or they just blamed it on him, but I believe he did a run-in, the first thing he ever did for the WWF, and he kicked Ahmed Johnson so hard that his kidney got lacerated, and he ended up missing about 5 months.
Ahmed?
Yeah.
Ahmed's another case of somebody who shouldn't have been there. That guy was terrible. Awful. But he was so massive and so big. I mean... But see, massive and big only translates to in real life. You say massive and big on TV, You don't see it that much. But if you were standing there with him, he was 270, 280, and was just a big guy.
You told me you or the office tried to get you to mentor him at one point.
One time, the night that the clique pulled their deal in Madison Square Garden, I went to mentoring him about a week or so earlier. But I'm thinking, there's really nothing for me to mentor him on because he's not a wrestler. I didn't tell them that, but he's a big guy. So, and he did all the big guy moves. He just didn't have timing, but I don't know how. I was trying to tell him timing, but to me, the guy's not going to get in any situation to where he needs to pull out the psychology card. I don't think. But, and I would tell him certain things and he'd just look at me and I'd say, you know what I'm talking about? And he'd go, yeah, man, yeah. And he didn't understand nothing. So I remember I was watching the deal go down with Nash and Hall and, you know, Heartbreak Kid and Sean Waltman at Madison Square Garden. And then Vince was standing about 6 feet away from me. We were both looking out the curtain. And he looked at me, and when it was about over, and he says, what do you think, Dutch? I'm like, no, Zeb. What do you think, Zeb? Now, what am I going to say? Hell, I didn't know what they'd been saying to each other. I don't know. So what could I say? I went, well, I didn't know what to say. And then he went down the room and in come Pat Patterson in and come Jerry Briscoe in. And then I guess the ones involved, I think they went in there, but I didn't hear any hollering and screaming. You know, I think they all let it go. And the only one who got the bad end of that was Triple H, because Hall and Nash were leaving. He couldn't punish them. Heartbreak Kid was his champion. He can't punish him because he didn't want him going to WCW. Only one they could punish was Triple H. And he punished the shit out of him for about 6 months.
This will be the last question I ask you, and I promise I'll let you go. Were you mentoring Ahmed Johnson during his feud with Goldust, and then Goldust kisses Ahmed Johnson, gives him the kiss of life, quote unquote? And
yeah.
This is at King of the Ring '96. Do you remember his reaction legitimately?
It was King of the Ring. What month is that?
June.
I think I may have been there, but I wasn't mentoring him then. Nothing.
This was about a few weeks after the Click hug, I think, because that was in May.
Well, they quit. Vince, he quit saying anything about it. So I figured, well, they don't care about it anymore. I mean, I could have kept going in there and saying, well, Vince, I think it's Ahmed's. I mean, he's ready to go. And then he'd go out there and shit the bed. So that would go my influence, because it got dropped, I think, by nobody giving a shit.
Who did he hurt? Anyone that you know of that he hurt?
Well, I think he hurt Skip, I think, maybe. And he just, I don't even know where he came from. Where was he from?
Well, he came from Dallas, the Dallas territory. It was Tony Norris. You know, I think that was called Global. I think he came from there.
Well, he didn't. Nobody remembers him from Global. I mean, that was Global after World Class. And I don't know. And of course, he got in because he was so big. But I don't know what you could have done with him, really. You could have done something with it, maybe got a little bit of a run out of him. But, you know, there's some people you look at, some wrestlers, some performers that you look at. If they don't grab you right off the bat, what can we do with this guy? Or something that's appealing about this person, they're not going to make it. And if their work is as bad as Ahmed's was, he could stand in one place. He could do that. but he couldn't. I never saw him throw a drop kick, arm drag, maybe one, twice. He could slam people all day long. That was good. He could do that. I think he was good at walking from the dressing room to the ring. And if you could have stopped the tape then and have him walk back from the ring to the dressing room, you may have had something with it. It was that time in the ring that was his drawback.
I wrote about him in the book I wrote about The Rock, and essentially he gets injured several times. One of them is a complete accident. He just comes back. I think he's part of the Nation of Domination, and he gets injured immediately, and then he comes back, and then in his first match back, his hand hits like an exposed nail on the announcer's table. So that tore up his hand, and that was him gone for another few weeks. And then I think just before he was fired for like the last time, in maybe about February '98, they found him passed out on a plane a few weeks earlier, and just the writing was on the wall for him. They turned him so many times. Then he kept getting injured. Then he kept getting injuring everybody else, and then they just cut him loose. In the end, he wasn't worth the trouble.
Well, they should have done that. I could have told him that 3 years earlier, because he's just a big guy. He couldn't talk for crapola. And if he did talk, you'd go, what? What did he say? And somebody says, I don't know. Turn it up or whatever. Slow. You just couldn't understand what he was saying. So anyway, that was his problem, wasn't mine.
No, well, and a problem for you guys there is that this podcast is now officially over. So if you've got any questions for Dutch... Oh,
I just started talking. No, it's gone long enough.
It has gone long enough, and I'm sure no one will agree out there. They want to hear you even more. But for now, we're going to shut down the podcast.
They're like that. We're going to have a little bell go ding, 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 ding. That tells, all right, you can wake up now. Just get the whole hour in, and then you can, because we get credit for that.
Absolutely. Questions for Dutch@gmail.com if you would like the Dirty Dutchman from Oil Trough, Texas, to answer your questions. I've got 2 books. Dutch has got 2 books. If you want books signed by Dutch, his books, not mine, go to Dirty Dutch Mantell with 2 L's at gmail.com, and he will get back to you with a price for signed books and signed certificates. There may be t-shirts on the way soon. The website's on the way soon. Everything else. But for now, thank you very much for watching. And Zeb, I called you Zeb for Christ's sake. Dutch.
That's good.
I was thinking we the people, and I just went Zeb.
Vince never called me anything other than Zeb.
Well, I'll try not to.
And he would tell everybody, no, you don't call them by their former name. You call them by the name we call them here. And he says, just in case, and it was a good thought. In case you're doing an interview and you call him by his former name.
Well, I called you by your former name then, but your current name, Dutch, thank you for entertaining us all, and we the people.
See you next week.